Hi everybody and welcome back to the Wolves Fancast YouTube channel for your latest GTA Fancast with me, Gully. I am going to be reviewing the 1-1 draw with Nottingham Forest, which I had the pleasure of viewing twice over, once live and once to kind of give you the lowdown really of what was a really disappointing performance. It didn't get any better the second time around. Usually I would say that having watched the game live, the tension and the drama of stuff kind of overtakes sometimes. And once you look back at a performance a second time, you can actually take some positives out of it that maybe you wouldn't have noticed during the live viewing. But this time around, I genuinely thought it was even worse than I can recall from the weekend. And it all started with that now infamous starting lineup. Just to remind you all, it was Jose Sarr in goal, Semedo, Dawson, Kilman, and Totti across the back four, with Lemina, Neves, and Moutinho probably as a three in midfield. Moutinho kind of advanced ahead of Neves and Lemina. Adama Traore and Nunes in the wider positions, and Matheus Cunha up front. Now, I thought about this team, and as many of us did, I wondered to begin with what kind of shape we would be lining up in, and it ended up being a bit of a kind of 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 kind of strange mishmash. But when you consider the individuals that were involved in that shape, I actually thought, well, if we actually played them in their kind of most suitable positions, what would it look like? And this is kind of what I came up with on the left-hand side. You can see no real natural left sides in that team whatsoever. When you think about Matheus Nunes being the most advanced player on that left flank in theory, and Totti Gomez filling in at left back, really. We know he's much more comfortable as a centre half. He can do a job there, and I think he did to a reasonable level without ever really looking convincing. But we also know that for whatever reason, Julian Lopetegui doesn't want to pull on the resources that he has in that left back position, in specific reference to Ryan Aït-Nouri, who can't seem to buy a game at the moment. But when you think about that kind of made up team with everybody in their favourite positions on the left, when you look at the average positions of the actual 11 from the start during the Forest game, it's really not that far off. People have will have their natural tendencies as players to take up the spaces that they often like to, despite game plans and despite tactics. And we'll come on to what those tactics might have been shortly. But genuinely, not a clue what the idea was behind that starting lineup and what that led to. I think about this quite a bit. Team sheets are handed in, I think, an hour and a half before kickoff. The media get to know them in advance of them being announced at 2 p.m. for a 3 p.m. kickoff. And you see those tee sheets go in as an opposition, and you look at it. And for a start, and I mean, the majority of the time, I'm sure that opposition managers, opposition teams are wondering how Wolves are going to line up. To be honest, that confusion can be, work in your favour, I guess. But on this occasion, you're wondering what on earth are they doing, and where is the actual threat going to come from? We've spoken in a number of occasions about how Matheus Cunha needs some support with a more traditional number 9. We've spoken on a number of occasions about how Adama Traore is much more effective with the target in the box to hit. We've spoken about the fact that Matheus Nunes isn't really a wide player, and he's been doing a good job for us on occasion and has performed well in certain games, thinking back to the Fulham fixture in particular. And also the simple fact that you're playing a centre half at left back and you're on a hiding to nothing there. And what we ended up with was Nottingham Forest sitting back with the knowledge, safe in the knowledge that we weren't going to really threaten them in that key area that I've highlighted there with the TOUCHMAP, and quite sparse activity in the really dangerous areas of the pitch, and allowed us to have a lot of possession. You can see, so much kind of activity in the deeper parts of the pitch, lots in the wide areas, and they kind of picked us off on the counter attack thereafter, and really had the better of all of the chances throughout the game, and we were fortunate that one fell to Daniel Podence, the one player who has a bit of composure in the penalty area, and he scored. But you can see here again, really highlighting the troubles that we had with building up play. Lots and lots of passes around our defence, around our deepest midfielders, kind of creating that horseshoe effect that we like to talk about. And when you kind of narrow it down even into the final third, a hell of a lot of activity out to the right flank, because we had natural wide players there in Semedo and Traore, and down the left hand side not a fat lot. Because again, it was very much makeshift, and nobody naturally going to go and threaten deep in the deeper parts of the pitch with regards to attacking a fullback. So, kind of highlighting that point again, Moutinho and Matheus Cunha would ostensibly be the two most advanced players that were selected from the start to play, and you can see from their touch map, we totally dominated possession. And the fact that they had barely anything around the penalty area combined was really disappointing. Totti, again, just wanted to highlight again that he was game. He was, he did his job diligently for the most part, and he offered himself in the final third. But really, you don't want Totti Gomez having that amount of touches in the final third to try and make something happen. He did put a couple of decent crosses in, to be fair to him, but he's not likely to make too much happen. It's through no fault of his own. And again, Adama really kind of siphoned out to the wing, as he tends to be, but with no target to hit. So what is the point? João Moutinho's role. This is something that I've spoken about previously with respect to him playing, doing a role for us outside of possession. He tends to sit on the deepest midfielder of the opposition, which stops them building up play, stops them having influence the game, etc., etc. But in a game like we had on Saturday, when we are totally dominant in possession, essentially he's null and void as a footballer, and you've wasted 45 minutes of a player's career, of our time, of our team's time, when you could have had a genuine threat in the penalty area in that position to work with Matheus Cunha. He was a number 10 ostensibly in this game. He had 3 touches in the attacking third out of 22. And I'll highlight a few examples of what ended up happening because of João Moutinho, who he is, what he is as a player, and why we ended up really struggling to build attacking phase in this game. You can see here in the screenshot highlighted, João Moutinho is dropping well deep to kind of almost come and receive the ball off Craig Dawson. I mean, you shouldn't be standing that close to him to go and get the ball, but it allows Forest to kind of really take liberties in terms of, don't need to go and press too much because there aren't too many targets ahead of the ball. You can allow the ball to go in long because we don't have someone that is going to hold on to it and fight off centre halves. Just really, really disappointing to think that we have to resort to these kind of measures just to build up passing moves. Again, talking about natural tendencies of players, Matheus Nunes is a player who is a central midfielder, comes to collect the ball off the back line, has done in his previous roles at Sporting, and this is where he will naturally look to receive the ball on the half turn and look to drive away. But it creates problems for us in build-up. I mean, there are so many different occasions where this was the case. Again, you got Neves dropping deep to pass the ball, Lamina ahead of the ball, generally speaking, them two kind of flip between each other to drop into the back three shape to build possession. But again, Nunes dropping deeper. Moutinho, not in the worst position for someone who would be number 10, but again, just not really offering too much and not really threatening that Forest back line. Once more, I've highlighted this one because Matheus Cunha has actually come into the defensive half to come and support build up a game. So where does that leave us in terms of actually trying to create a threat to the back line? Somebody running in behind to cause trouble. There isn't one. And once again, just consistently players coming towards the ball, no threat in behind. I do feel like a broken record, kind of repeating myself on this front. And that's why we ended up doing what we did, which was just pass the ball around incessantly and not create any chances. it's not always easy enough to evidence from kind of the broadcast angle. So if I go to kind of my tactics board over here, which highlights us up against the 4-3-3 of Nottingham Forest, I've set us up in what ended up being quite often the way that we would receive the ball in deeper areas and look to build play. Lamina dropping in, Kilman dropping out, and Dawson dropping out to create a back three. Totti, again, really, if you want to be able to play this way, you need your wider fullback to go out and press high against the opposition fullback here. But again, not his tendency to do that. Nunes dropping in would be supported by having Totti in that space, and maybe occupying the midfielder a little bit so he can receive the ball in here. But again, Cunha not really giving the defense enough to think about. Tendency to drop in and come and face the ball all the time. Wants to receive the ball with his back to goal and link up with the team. And you've got Adama here who is playing high, he's playing wide, but isn't necessarily going to threaten him behind. It's not a natural thing for him to do. He prefers again to receive the ball to feet and start running at people in that way. So I do think Lopetegui has missed Hwang in particular because he is that guy that won't necessarily worry too much about receiving the ball to his feet. He wants to run in behind. We saw him do that against Liverpool and reap the rewards with the goal and the own goal by Matip. And I expect him, now that he's back in training, to come into the team ASAP. And frankly, and who'd have thought we'd have said this last season, we could do with him being back in the side because he just gives us something different. What Lopetegui is going to do against Chelsea, I don't know. And it's anybody else's guess as well. But I think the sooner or later, the sooner we get some sort of consistent lineup that works for us, the better, because it really is becoming squeaky bum time for us down at the bottom.